So I know behind the scenes you're a pretty big action guy,
Hmm.
but I also know that going into this ranking, you had not seen the majority of these films. So what was your
Hmm.
mindset going into the first time
Yeah,
watching this?
it's funny how this series has always been like around, but for whatever reason, I've never actually sat down and watched them. I don't know why. I guess they just kind of escaped me, and it's been the one blind spot as far as action franchises go. Yeah, I mean, I've always heard the reputation that the Lethal Weapon movies were kind of really set the blueprint for what a buddy cop action movie kind of could be, in a lot of different aspects. So I was definitely expecting to see solid stuff. I know I meant to get to these a while. I'm glad I didn't because we saved it for this. But with the
Yeah.
passing of Richard Donner last year, I was like, oh man, I really should watch those Lethal Weapon movies. Like for him at least. And but I'm glad we're getting right to it now. But yeah, I mean, I went in expecting. At least some good action, some good buddy cop chemistry, and but I didn't know, how I was going to feel about each one, and I really didn't know the set pieces or the plots or anything like that. So I went in pretty fresh. I mean, I know you were kind of similar, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if
So
you've encountered any of these.
I've seen the first one twice, and
Hmm.
I liked it. Like, so spoiler for that. I liked the film, but it's one of those where it's like it never caused me any like rush to go watch the rest of them. And it's one of those
Mm.
where I'd heard, you know how sometimes when you have a franchise like this where it's like a comedy, or even like we were talking about earlier when we did Rambo, where it's like the first one sets the tone and it doesn't really
Hmm.
know exactly what's going to be yet, and then two and three ramp up the action and the insanity. And I've heard that about this franchise too.
Hmm.
So it's one of those where I'm like, I mean, I'm hoping that works for me, but you never know. So going into this, I had tempered expectations, and I'm excited. Whoops, I'm deleting old banners. I'm excited that we are doing this because, regardless of how I feel about these movies, I am happy that I've watched them, and I'm excited to
Hmm.
talk to you about them because I have no idea what you're gonna think.
No, no, me too. And I have to say, the first time I even encountered Lethal Weapon, not even seeing the movies, but I know going to the movies in 1998, going to the theater, that Lethal Weapon 4 trailer was everywhere. I don't know if you've seen that trailer,
Uh-uh.
but like it was in front of like every movie I saw, no matter what the rating of the movie I was seeing it was, like it was everywhere. And basically, the most of the trailer was just the opening scene of that movie, which we'll get to with the guy with the flamethrower and all that
Yeah,
stuff. It was like
nuts.
a good chunks. It was mostly chunks of that scene, and then like Chris Rock spitting like a line and Jet Li kind of posing in front of like some fire and like a couple of things, and like it looked pretty cool. Like I was like, oh, I wish I was familiar with the series or was old enough to watch them because I was
Yeah.
like 12 at the time. But I think the me not being familiar with the series, my dad introduced me to a lot of the action movies that I became fan of as a kid. So a lot of the Schwarzenegger and Stallone movies he was a fan of. So I was familiar with pretty early, even the Rambo movies to a degree, the Rocky movies. This was just not one that was on in the house, so
Yeah.
I just never exposed to it. And it's just one that, yeah, I'm 35 years old, and for whatever reason, I've never sat down to watch a Lethal Weapon movie. And it's
It's
funny.
also
Well, going into it and just real quick, going into it, the Blu-ray set has been sitting over on my
yeah,
shelf for like 2 years. Like I bought it
exactly.
like 2 years ago, like the Blu-ray box set or whatever, and it's just I've never cracked it open for whatever reason. So I'm glad I was finally able to get a reason to sit down and watch them.
Yeah,
But yeah,
it's one of
sorry,
those
good.
where it's interesting that because the first one well, the first two written by Shane Black, where it's like, all right, so I'm a Shane Black fan, so I should love this, right? But you just never know
Right.
because it's one of those when you have a writer who is as extra as Shane Black
Hmm.
is, and he's very intricate with his style and his type of humor, that it's either going to feel repetitive since I've seen all of his older stuff, so I know that his tropes that he
Hmm.
writes. I've already seen them, and I've seen them perfected technically, or it's
Hmm.
not going to hold up. So I was always curious about that as well. So that also
Yeah.
took a fear into it. I'm like,
Well, and we'll talk about the second one because the second one was written by him, but it also wasn't written by him, and we'll talk about that
okay,
because he had a script, but it was drastically changed from what it originally was and rewritten by another guy. So, but there's shades of what he wrote in there. So we'll talk about it, but as we go through the movies. But yeah, technically yes, but technically no as well. So, but we'll talk. But the first one, it was definitely strictly written by him. And speaking of the first one, you said we'll probably have a different format for this since there's only 4 movies. It might get confusing with us going back and forth. That we're just going to talk about these movies one after another, and then we'll kind of reveal our rankings at the end. So that sounds like a good idea. So speaking of the first one and Shane Black, let's just talk about the first one, directed by Richard Donner, written by Shane Black, and we'll just get into it from 1987.
So up until this current watch, how many times have you seen the first one?
Okay, so the first one, again, all the sequels, these were my first time seeing them. So straight up. So the first one, no, go watch our show from last week and we talked about the Predator. So yeah, we don't need to go into that this week. Go watch the last week's show. But yeah, I started to watch the first one like when Richard Donner died, like a year ago or whatever it was. And for whatever reason, I think I was just like tired that day or something. Yeah. I don't think I like halfway through it, and then I broke off and just didn't go back to it. So I'd seen some of the original one, and I've seen the trailers and clips online, things like that. So, but I've never actually sat down again and watched it start to finish. You know what I mean? Until literally a few days ago when I sat down and started the series for this ranking. So yeah, really it was my first. I'm still pretty fresh because I only remember pieces of that first half, anyways.
So what was your initial opinion on it?
Initially, because again, it's so different than the other ones, and we'll get into it. But this one, it was way darker than I expected it to be, like way more serious. And I think that threw me off the first time I watched it, or at least started to watch it that other time about a year ago, where I was like, isn't it supposed to be a series where it's just like them, getting into adventures and kind of joking around and blowing buildings up and stuff?
And it's buddy cop movie, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and instead, like, they're not together at the beginning of the movie. He's this kind of weird outsider cop who has these mental issues from his wife dying, and he's suicidal. And like one of the opening scenes we see him in is like him with a gun in his mouth, like ready to commit suicide. And like it gets really, really dark and like really strange. And then they kind of hook up. Kind of against their will, and they're hesitant. He's seeing, Murtaugh, Danny Glover is kind of seeing how unhinged he is, and the guy who's going to jump from the building with the suicide attempt, and he's just like, yeah, you want to go? Let's just jump right now. Like, come on, I'll do it with you. And it's like, let's just do it. And like all that stuff threw me off. But going back to it, I actually watched like half of it again. Like yesterday before we went live to try to reset my expectations again after I'd seen it, and I settled into it. But comparing it to the other ones, and again we'll get to the other ones. It's way more different like than the other ones from what I kind of knew off the top of my head.
Did you compare it to, like I gave that example a little bit ago of First Blood and the rest of the Rambos?
Yes, Lethal Weapon is definitely First Blood compared to Rambo 2 or Rambo 3. 100%. It was like way less jokey, way less puns or whatever.
You also got to realize
way more just a straight cop movie.
Haven't built up that chemistry yet because they're combative the entire film. So they're not buddies yet. They're just two good cops. But they're also, Murtaugh, he's at a point in his career where, it's the meme, I'm getting too old for this shit. So it's like, it's the start of that from the beginning, from Jump Street, and then just Riggs just being, like you said, unhinged and just not mentally stable. But at the end of the day, they're good cops. So once they finally are able to put all their drama aside, or at least understand each other's family issues and personal lives, then they're able to kind of work together. And it's one of those where if like taking the franchise and the film quality out of it, if you take if you hear people say Riggs and Murtaugh are two of their favorite duos, I would not judge by any means, because what you build by the end of it, which obviously the chemistry and this relationship is fantastic and it's beautiful. And as it builds up later, they start to become best friends, living together, or at least just kind of like really being connective. But you have to start that here. So I do enjoy that. I appreciate it. But you know,
Mhm.
I kind of feel like what you're hinting at, I'm kind of hinting at as well, where it's like it's
It
not quite
might be
there
the
yet.
least rewatchable of the
Yep,
series. I don't see myself going back to watch this casually as I did. Again, I'm kind of hinting at where I'm going, like you,
same.
as some of the sequels where it's like a little more of a balance of like
Hmm.
having those unhinged moments, but also being like entertaining to where they're getting the jokes out there. The chemistry is really like tight, and the banter back and forth is really good, and they're having a little more fun overall, but still having those serious moments. Yeah, I think they were still trying, like you said, like Rambo, they're still trying to figure out what this series could be, and not even knowing if they were going to have an Owen. This first one, people don't realize this first one had like a $20 million budget. It only made about 65 million. It was a hit, but a modest hit. And then they kind of going into the sequel, they had a bigger budget, and the sequel was the one that really cemented the franchise because that one was a monster hit. And because the first one had found life on VHS on video.
Yeah.
People when people were renting videos in the video store had found a life, and the sequel became an even bigger hit because of that, and really again set the template of kind of what the series would become as far as with that balance of like comedy, action, entertainment, adventure, all that kind
Totally.
of stuff kind of mixed together. So,
And even just looking
but
at the
yeah,
poster, it's one of those where that's kind of like the classic buddy cop like poster where
oh
they're
yeah,
just next to each
back
other
to
with holding
back,
guns.
sort
Yeah.
of whatever. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
With the red font, and I feel like that's one of those things as it start to like sat in the public's
Hmm.
eyes, it was like, hey, I need to give that a shot, or like that's intriguing. And then like you said, I wouldn't obviously call it a cult movie, but it definitely developed a later,
The following,
yeah.
yeah.
And
Hmm.
that's one of those where going like we keep hinting at going into the other ones. I Similar to you, I don't find this one as rewatchable. And I think the difference between like this and like another franchise where another movie within the franchise may not have the depth that the first one have,
Hmm.
but it's the other ones are still well made, and they're still they're still on. I feel like it's on par where it's like there's a parallel where like you can tell that
Yeah.
the same people are involved. Donner obviously did all four, so that helps immensely. The four of
Hmm.
they, other than four, all of them were pretty similar in release dates. So like none of
Hmm.
that, anything was switched within their careers and their mindsets. So like the flow of like who these people are within the characters and the actors at the time. Obviously Mel Gibson is a lot different today, but back in
Right.
the day, like he was still at that point. He's kind of like at the highlight. Being coming
Well,
off
and
Mad
even
Max.
coming into this movie, people didn't really know who Mel Gibson was yet. He was the Mad Max guy, but Mad
Yeah,
Max, you remember, was an
Australian.
Australian
Yeah,
movie and was only kind of a modest hit over here with like Road Warrior and Beyond Thunderdome. It was a modest hit, but not really a big one. It was, again, starting to catch fire on video. People were starting to discover it, HBO, things like that. But even Danny Glover was just coming off like The Color Purple. He was a dramatic guy,
yeah.
and he was also he's a bad guy in The Color Purple, and he had another movie where he's kind of he's not a good dude, and he's playing like this good family man cop in this movie, you know what I mean, who has like the family, and he's a good dad, and hey kids, good to be home, I'm gonna retire
Yep.
soon, da da da, doing all that stuff. And yeah, it's like the total opposite of when we watch Color Purple, like, and he's just a monster in that movie, like he's a total monster. But yeah, like, it's interesting to watch the development. I think Riggs definitely does have an arc in this movie where he's in a dark place and he sort of starts to connect with Murtaugh's family. The scenes where they're having like dinner and stuff. He's starting to loosen up a little bit and kind of connect with them. And obviously we see throughout the series again, like we're talking about, they kind of take him in as like a part of their family.
Yeah.
Like he just comes in to
Very
hang out
family.
with the family and and just connect with them, and they become like brothers. So
I mean, you also got to
it
think of how
develops
it
beyond that.
develops here. The ending of this movie, like he helps save Murtaugh's daughter and everything with
Hmm.
it's so like one of the things I want to kind of touch on. This is easier for this type of ranking is
Yeah.
I want to not necessarily rank, but kind of I guess rank the villains and
Hmm.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the finales because there's four
Right.
finales and they're all different. And then
Yes.
just the relationship and the side characters. Like later we get Pesci and Rene Russo and all that stuff. Where it's like kind of
Hmm.
ranking like and Chris
Right, right,
Rock.
right. How it develops.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so with
Mhm.
this one, what were your thoughts on Gary Busey? Is he as memorable now that you've seen all four?
Gary
Like,
Busey is definitely the most memorable, like, muscle,
yeah,
of like the henchman. You know what I mean? Because his fight with Riggs, I think, is the best shot fight of the
yeah,
series. Like their fight at the end is really well
Dark and
staged.
in rain, but it still
Yeah,
looks
yeah,
good.
it's in the rain, but like it looks good. It's choreographed well. Apparently, it took them like a week to film it. You can tell like they took their time with it. How it kind of develops. It's just a very raw, like brawling fight, but like Mel Gibson's using his like jujitsu at points. He puts him in like a triangle choke at one point.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of ahead of its time. He's pulling the arm, he's doing all this stuff, he's choking him out. Like there's some cool stuff. It feels like a really raw, like nasty fight, and even the stuff leading up to that, where you get to see Gibson how like he's almost like the T-1000. Remember when T-1000's like running after the motorcycle? Like he's a fast runner in this movie, just running after cars straight up, just like catching them on foot, like all that stuff where he's running down Hollywood Boulevard is like a lot of fun. But like, yeah, I really like that fight, and I think Gary Busey's. I think his name's like Mr. Joseph or something like that. He's one of the more memorable like muscle henchman guys. Because Mitchell Ryan as the main bad guy, I had a hard time at first telling him and Tom Atkins apart. They look almost exactly the same, other than the mustache. Like they have the same kind of square head with the short haircut. And like I was like, is Tom Atkins? Because I know Tom Atkins from the horror movies like Halloween 3 and Night of the Creeps and stuff like that. And then I was like, is Tom Atkins playing like a dual role here? Is he like a twin, like an evil twin? And I it took me a second because he's kind of bland, but I think Busey being next to him and like the stuff where he's got the lighter, like, just burning his hand and just not flinching at all, just like he doesn't feel pain or whatever. Like he's more memorable than Mitchell Ryan is. So as far as that goes, I like him, and I like the final fight between
it's
Riggs
very personal.
and Busey. I think very much. Yeah, it's really nice. So I think it's one of the better ones, definitely of the series. Like it's actually like a hand-to-hand combat kind of thing.
It's actually funny because one of my favorite movies of all time, Friday, it gives me vibes of like that, at that
Debo and Ice Cube.
Debo and Craig when they're fighting in the front yard, and I feel like it gives me vibes of that. I don't know if F. Gray was he used that as inspiration or whatever. That's a coincidence, but as I was watching that, it was giving me Friday vibes, and that's fun. Right. So yeah,
and you also got Danny Glover and the rest of the like they're not intervening, they're just kind of watching and yelling, just like and Mel Gibson just like, no, let me go, yep. Don't intervene, do you want me to jump in? And he's like, no,
be a man.
be a man, son, use these, Friday, it's very similar. Funny that you remember that episode. I was like, roughly 10 years later or so, but exactly. I could see that, but yeah, it's got some memorable set pieces. I think it takes a while to kind of really build up the action, but it's
another one that really worked for me is the scene at the house when they shoot into the pool. They have a lot of pool fights in this series.
Yeah, right.
But, the first one when they're shooting in that, and they're kind of, this is like I think the first moment when they really had to like trust each other as cops and kind of like be in the action. And it's one of those where Riggs is just he is who he is at this point. You don't know if he's crazy or if he's a good cop or a little bit of both. And I feel like this was like the first time when you really got that. And that and the guy jumping. So it's one of those where it's like there's elements in it that stand out to just kind of build up who these characters are. So regardless of where I put this in my ranking, I will say that it is a fantastic foundation for two of the most iconic.
It's a good movie. It's a good movie. Do I think it's the classic everybody makes it out to be? I don't know. And maybe time will tell. Me coming back to it.
Are afraid to admit that they like sequels more, so they just give this one the credit for the
franchise? I think so, because I think the people who say that also maybe haven't gone back to the sequels in a while. I have a hunch about that.
You don't remember which one's which.
yeah, maybe not, because literally when I was watching them this week, some of the it's not that I couldn't tell which movie was which, but like some of the action scenes I was getting mixed up with like what sequel, like what movie was what.
That's what I'm saying. So like all of them feel the same, but not repetitive. But you can just tell it's all the same. Like they have a vision in mind, and it's one of those where it's like, you got to think about this formula too. This formula is not that hard to do. The buddy cop, you got the bad guy, you got their own side stuff that they're dealing with, and that's what builds these characters up. The cop stuff, that's the least interesting in the entire franchise, because obviously the cops that's at the forefront. But what you love about these characters, and generally what you remember about these characters, are the family dynamics, the interpersonal relationships between each other, and just the set pieces, which that ties into where they're going and traveling and stuff like that. So Lethal Weapon 1 set that foundation, and I'm definitely curious in the comments to see where it ranks.
And I think they definitely build on certain things. Now, whether you as a viewer roll with where they go with the franchise or not,
Yeah.
is on you. I kind of just to spill, I do roll where it goes.
Same.
So yeah, and so I think Lethal Weapon's a good movie. I don't know if it's the be all end all action classic that people kind of that the reputation kind of has. But again, we'll kind of talk about that when we do our rankings, and we'll get there. But yeah, we can
Jumping
talk
into
about
Lethal
the
Weapon 2.
sequel 2 years later, 1989. After the movie has been a hit on video, they double the budget, they double the set pieces. Everything's bigger and badder, obviously, in the sequel, and it also made like 3 times as much money. So it was a
Yeah,
monster
this one
hit.
balled out.
Now, this one was number 3 that year, just behind. And think of the 2 movies it just was behind, which were also monster. It's Batman '89 and Last Crusade, which were both monster movies. Yep. So, to have that much in just a sequel to a franchise that just started 2 years before is really something. Yeah. Lethal Weapon 2.
So I guess for the first thing to mention is Joe Pesci. He's new into the franchise.
Leo Getz.
Yeah. And honestly, you don't know if he's a good guy, a bad guy, a bumbling idiot, if there's something that he's hiding, or if he's just a weirdo. Like I think they do a good job of setting up this character to be who he ends up being. But given why they're involved, they're hired. They got into a lot of trouble, so now they're doing some babysitting duty essentially.
Right.
So, and then once you start to find out what he did and the money laundering, all that stuff, you're like, is he kind of a gangster? He's like, no, he's just kind of, he's kind of a creep who just kind of lucked into,
and he's a fast talker who's got connections, who just knows everybody, kind of has his ear to everything, and he's a blabbermouth, and he gets people to talk. But yeah, like I know the Leo Getz thing is definitely polarizing. I've seen it online where some people roll with it, some people. I'm on the side where I roll with it. I like Joe Pesci in these movies. I like Leo Getz. I like.
I think it also is because if you like know Joe Pesci's like usual characters, it's so far away from like his gangster stuff that it's like fresh to see him do something new. And it's like when you go to an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie and he's not being Dutch or any of those types of characters or the Terminator, you're like, oh, this is actually refreshing. So if you're a fan, then you kind of give that a little more praise because it's like, wow, he's not just one note. And Joe Pesci is not just one note in this film. He is not Nicky from Casino or
beating people over the head with a baseball bat and slamming their heads in vices. Yeah, no, he's not. He's. It's funny. I like his dynamic because. His dynamic, his role gives Briggs and Murtaugh something to unite against, and they're both insulting, like they're not going out against each other, but they're kind of channeling everything towards Pesci. But he starts to grow on them after a while. But it's one of those things where I like his dynamic where he keeps wanting to help. Like he wants to help, he wants to be helpful, but he's just a bumbling fool. Like, when they're going in the house, like halfway through the movie and Murtaugh's like going in the front, he's like, I'll go around the back. And he just like runs around the back. He's like, I'll go check the back. And he's just running around and I'll cover the back, they keep telling him over and over again, stay in the car, stay in the car. And he doesn't stay in the damn car. But like he just never does, and but like I laughed a lot with him, man. I like his dynamic. I think
I'll spoil this right now. This is the one. This is the movie I laughed the most. This is the one I laughed the most. This is the funniest of the franchise to me. So, and I think Leo Getz's character, he starts that because he just adds what you're missing in that first one, character wise. So yeah, I definitely agree with that.
So yeah, I'm on the side of Leo Getz. I guess we'll talk about. Again, we're talking about the villains. So I think Joss Ackland's character, the main bad guy, I'm forgetting his name. He's not Han. I know him as Hans from Mighty Ducks, but he's the bad guy in this movie. Yeah, Arsen Rudd. I think he might be the most memorable presence as far as like a head villain in the series. But the take on that is that he has bland henchmen. He doesn't have a Gary Busey. Yeah. So like that kind of stands out. But he stands out as a presence as far as like he's very memorable, like with his whole diplomatic immunity, all this shit, and just like the South African
immunity
stuff.
revoked.
Yeah, it's just been revoked. Yeah, I mean it's corny, but it's fun. It's one of those moments like I can imagine people in the theater just being like,
Yeah,
"Yeah,
exactly.
like, shoot that!" It's definitely like one of those moments. But so yeah, he's memorable with his kind of he brings a nice gravitas to the part where he's very memorable. But yeah, he's got bland henchmen, so it's kind of a trade off there,
But it's
as
also
more so the
the
first one.
girl. I'm looking, Rika, like the
Hmm.
fact that she kind of is in and
Yeah.
out and playing both sides for a little bit because she's afraid, and she's a
Hmm.
good person, but also just like in any of these movies, is she helping out? Where is there an
You don't
ultimatum?
know.
Is it is there an ulterior motive, or is it legit? And it's one of those where that adds a little bit of suspense
Hmm.
as well. So like I feel like because you're lacking in the henchman, like you
Hmm.
said, having her presence helps out with that because it's still connected there, and that's what kind
Hmm.
of brings our characters and everything going on with Murtaugh in this movie is wild. By I think
Yeah.
one of the most memorable things in the entire franchise is the toilet bomb. You know what I
The
mean?
toilet bomb.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's hilarious, it's weird, and at that point, that these two characters are BFFs at this point. Like,
And I can only imagine how numb his legs really were because my
oh
legs
yeah,
get numb after 10 minutes of sitting down and scrolling on the
exactly.
phone. And imagine
Looking at
he
TikToks
basically
and
says he was
looking
there.
stuff.
He was there all night. Like he didn't move all night.
Yeah, I
Like
think
he's
it
been
said
there for like
18
12
hours, if
hours
I
or something.
remember. Yeah, it
But
was a
I
long
do I
time.
do like the smash cut of him being like, Riggs, just keep it on the down low. Just call the bomb squad, get a couple of guys here, da da da, and next smash cut to fire trucks everywhere and bomb squad everywhere and cops everywhere, and Leo's out front like waving cops in the front door again, trying to help. Like it's a nice little detail. He's like waving people in and trying to direct traffic. Like he's not saying anything. He's just doing it. Like he's always kind of a presence in the background, which I like. And yeah, all that stuff is a lot of fun. That was a limit in all of the trailers as well. I went back and retroactively watched the original trailers on YouTube. It was like a big part
I
of the
should have done
trailer.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, I just find it fascinating what they highlight. But yeah, I mean, you have a lot of that fun stuff in the beginning, and then it also again takes. Again, I feel Shane Black's presence on the back half of the movie
Yeah.
when they kill Rika, whatever her name is, and the dude tells him, he had something to do with his wife dying, a few years earlier, and he puts on, I call it the vengeance cap, and goes on his rampage
Yep.
later, and when she dies and he goes like full on unhinged again, that feels a lot more like the Shane Black stuff because in the original script that he wrote. And again, it was rewritten. Riggs died at the end, and you kind of feel that at the end. They tease that a little bit,
Yeah.
like it could have, you got those shots where he gets shot and he's laying there, and you see Murtaugh coming back down. Riggs, talk to me. You feel like he could have died there, and they kind of maybe they tacked it on, maybe they reshot it. I don't know, but I know that was somewhat rewritten to where he did live, but there was an original ending where he died. But yeah, you definitely feel that when he's going a little crazy, and it might have one of my favorite scenes of the series when dude and I see again where anybody who's played Grand Theft Auto 5, the mission where he pulls down the house with the truck comes right from this, and I didn't know that. Like, have you played Grand Theft Auto 5? Like,
Not
there's
in
a
a long
story
time. I
mission.
forgot. Yeah.
There's a story mission in there where Michael and that you pull down a house on stilts like on a cliff like that with like a truck, and it's the same it's directly pulled from this movie where he pulls down the stilted house with the truck, and then I just love his reaction. He's just like, yeah, like it worked. It actually worked.
It felt so hoorah and so slapstick at the
Yeah.
same time. Like it's one of those.
Yeah,
Where it
no,
just,
but again, that balance though.
it's
Yeah,
fantastic in this, and
yeah.
I just love the never ending thing of everything with his family and his daughter, and then
Mhm.
everything with his house, building the garage, all this, all that stuff. There's just so much going on. So it balances so much within this film, and I think
Mhm.
it's just beautiful that it's one of those where it's like there's the action that you love, there's the love interest, there's a good villain, there's the
Mhm.
chemistry at this point is completely established between the two leads.
Yeah.
You add Leo to the mix to kind of
Well, and we see that chemistry even from the open. Literally, it opens with them driving in the
yep
middle of a chase,
it's
and the
it's
banter
just
back and forth is already like, "Don't
yep.
scrape up my car! Don't do that! I got room! Don't worry." And he scrapes up the car. Okay, I didn't have room. Sorry about that. You were totally right. God damn it! They have
But
that
that's the difference
chemistry right
between
from
this
the
one
beginning.
and the first one. In the
Yes.
first one, he would have yelled and be like, "Oh, I need a new partner. Or I
Yeah.
can't believe I'm with
Uh,
it." And then this one, it's just like
Just
Man,
like,
my
son
best
of a
friend's an
bitch.
idiot.
Yeah, you're a fucking moron. Yeah, like, and yeah, Gibson just like has this carefree attitude, but like Murtaugh's just kind of had to accept it at this point that he's just a crazy mofo and like
Right.
he's just gonna do whatever to get the job done. But yeah, all that stuff's a lot of fun. Again, I think it probably has the best balance of all those elements out of the sequels. Not to show my hand too early, but I think this one has the best
Yeah.
balance of all those elements early. So yeah, I really liked Lethal Weapon too.
Steven
Like,
disagrees with you in the comments about the henchman. He feels
well,
like
the comeuppance is good, but that dude. He's just like bland Euro trash. Like, to me, like I don't think he has like a presence like Gary Busey does. I think he's like the guy. Yeah, Riggs fights at the end. I don't think the fight is as memorable. Like the
Yeah.
dude just kicks him a couple of times, and it's a little back and forth. It's just not as stylized. It's not as well choreographed. Yes, the payoff is great with him dropping the damn shipping container on him. That's fun.
yeah.
But like, but I don't feel like the fight is as good. And Busey just has a presence about him. And this was before, again, he went crazy, like with the motorcycle accident and all that stuff. Like he's very calm and cool and sadistic, And that other guy just felt like any kind of Euro trash villain
I think
henchman you would
that
see in a lot of
regardless of
movies.
how I feel about this movie as a whole within the franchise, I do think that this is my least favorite finale, which is ironic because it's one of those where like I'm praising it nonstop this entire time. But if I had to nitpick, it's one of those where like
I think it's because it peaks with him pulling down the house. I think that's like a great like set piece, but then you have another like 15 minutes right after it,
exactly.
and like that's such a great like cool visual of him pulling down the house, and it's such a like
what happens when you have a fight with a henchman first, and then you go to the big
Mhm.
boss, where it's like you have
Right.
it's like you have two fights back to back. So the heavy hitting fighting is going to be with the henchman. The big boss is the brains, and then that's when you have the one liners and the jokes and all that stuff. Where it's so it's like it's memorable, but it's not at the same time. So Lethal Weapon 2, we've had a lot of praise for this one. I'm curious now that we're going to go into the paper. So Rotten Tomatoes has 1 and 2 actually at the same, different amounts of ratings and stuff, but like they're the same. So they're tied for the top 2 ratings. Now 3 and 4 are both.
I know
rotten.
They drop off.
Yeah, and they're both actually rotten. So I'm curious to see our opinions on it. So Lethal Weapon 3 from 1992. Which another interesting
2-year gaps in between 87 or 89. Oh, then it jumps a little bit to 92, but still roughly 2-3 years. In between each one. They're still hot. So the second one would have been was a big hit on video, just like the first one. So this one still made a ton of money. It was still a big hit. They still had momentum. To me, the third one, not to say it wasn't entertaining, I still had fun with it. I just think it's the most loose of all of them. As far as there's a lot of stuff in this movie there's a lot of more happenstance in this movie where they just kind of stumble into situations. Like literally 2 of the main set things are things where they just stumble into it. Like when they're being patrolmen after they blow up the building, at the beginning, they literally are just happen to be standing around when the armored truck thing happens.
Like there's no a cowboy. He just jumps in and he doesn't even think about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, and the stuff is fun when they get into it. My point is, I think it has. It's got the sloppiest stuff as far as getting them into the situations. Literally, the thing in the middle of the movie where they're at the burger stand and they just happen to see the drug deal across the street, and then it just happens to be the kid's friend. Like, they just happen to be there at the right time. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing to set up like them getting into these situations at all. There's no detective work. There's no nothing. So I think it's the sloppiest written and set up out of all of them. Again, when the action gets going, when the banter is going, I'm still having a good time. So it's not necessarily like saying it's bad. I watched 3 and had a great time with it overall. You know what I mean? I just think it's the most loosey-goosey. I heard they let them improv a lot in this movie and play around with it. I like the addition of Renee Russo. I think she's cool.
When she has her fight scene, when she's kicking ass,
and everything, it's fun.
And they're literally just watching. It's like
watching. Like, no, wait a minute. She does the thing with her back kick, and then she like back kicks the guy. He's like, oh wait, no, she'll get out of it. She'll get out of it. So
the difference between that scene in 1992 and a scene like that would be made today is the way it would be made today. It's like, hey, I don't know. You could just tell that there'd be a different vibe where it's like, oh my God, see, she can do it too. Whereas in this one, they're like, shit, she's gonna do it. We're not. Hell yeah, like you go kick
Yeah,
ass. And then,
yeah, yeah.
and then eventually Murtaugh's like, I'll go help. And then Riggs like, hey, I'm just gonna. He's holding the guy. And he's like,
Yeah,
yeah, you
yeah.
stay over here. And it's like at no point, I don't know. There's something about it. You can just tell that it was more
Mhm.
natural. Like that's why everyone loves characters like Ripley from the Alien franchise, where it doesn't
It's more
feel
free
forced.
flowing.
Yeah,
Yeah, it doesn't go forward.
it's within
She
the
just
story of what you're
does.
building up. I mean, obviously she's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
cop. She's Eternal Affairs, but she's still a cop, and that's mentioned later. I think in the fourth one where she's doing some, actually saying some things like I'm a cop, and it's one of those where it's like that. But it's like it's I also love, and they also really could have gone creepy with the relationship between Riggs and her of
Hmm.
the day at the house. But I actually love, it's one of my favorite scenes in the entire franchise, non-action wise, when they're comparing wounds. And it's one of those, when you vibe with someone, you just find, if you can just find something
Sure.
that's the most weirdest
Even though the scene is
random.
ripped off from Jaws, but it's still a good scene.
Yeah, but they didn't do that in a sexual way in Jaws. They did that.
I know, but it just they just turned it into a male female dynamic in this movie. I'm just saying the scene is pretty much ripped off from Jaws again, but still, it's like, oh, let's compare scars, like it's the same thing. Only yes, in Jaws, Dreyfus and Quentin were not about to make out, but I understand that. It's still a fun scene. I agree. Like again, it's the loosest, like the way they get into situations, how things get to a point is weird, but like I still roll with the movie, like for the overall, you know what I mean? Like I still am having fun, with all the stuff. Like it has one of my favorite little cool set pieces though in the middle of the movie where they're in the subway and those guys have the truck that like it drives on the subway tracks, but then it retracts the
Oh,
other wheels and like they just drive out on the street. I was like, oh, that's fucking cool. I haven't seen that in a movie. I was like, that's awesome. And he's hanging on the front of the subway train, just being like, speed up, get to like all that stuff is great. And it just shows how crazy Riggs is. He just is more of like at this point he's become more of an adrenaline junkie, just like
yeah.
getting off on the crazy octane action kind of stuff. It's not a suicidal death wish thing. It's just more of like he just doesn't care. Like he'll just do whatever he's got to do to to win.
To beat the case, or
Yeah,
beat the bad
right.
guys or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
and like I said, I feel like I sound repetitive saying it, but like even though technically the formula isn't completely different, none of
Hmm.
these movies feel the exact same, and I feel like that's a
No.
refreshing, idea of like it's the same director, it's the same two leads, and a lot of the side characters, carry over, like they stick around. You know what I mean? Like Joe Pesci's in 3 of the 4, and then Rene Russo's in 2 of the 4, and then obviously, all of Murtaugh's family's in it. You know what I mean? So it's like
Hmm.
and then everyone, all the cops and stuff. And I love. I love the cop stuff back and forth, like everything
Yeah.
with his daughter, and then the one of the funny jokes that's this one, right, with the commercial.
Oh, the condom commercial, yeah,
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 that's this one,
and
right?
and
Yeah.
the daughter, yeah, they reveals that, and no, I actually like the actual reveal of the condom commercial was just more awkward, funny, but then I actually laughed out loud when they do the prank at the station where they
Yeah,
they
when he's
pull the
got the
thing and it's
basket.
like the condom plant, the plant with the condoms hanging all over it. I thought that was pretty damn funny.
And
Yeah, I actually laughed
he
at
mentioned that.
that.
He was like, "Man, cops
Yeah.
are ruthless, man. I'm gonna hear
Well, and
about this
even
for a
and
week."
even Murtaugh, he's like kind of mad at first, but then they actually hold on for a minute to where he looks at it and he just starts laughing. He's just like, okay, that's a pretty damn good prank. Like that's pretty great. like they
Yeah,
can.
that's
I like
hilarious.
their chemistry. Like their characters are so like they can get to have those pissy moments, but at the same time they're just like, oh okay, like this is
Yeah,
kind of
they're
fun.
real.
Like yeah, it's a real moment of like okay, that is pretty damn funny. Like when you think about it, and yeah, it's funny. The only thing I still like Leo Getz, but I think this is my least favorite role of Leo Getz in the series.
He's too
Him doing
cocky
the
with
real
this real
estate,
estate. Yeah, the real
the real
estate.
estate stuff. Yeah, it's my least favorite Getz of the series. I think they pick it back up in 4 a little bit better. But yeah, like the third one, yeah, this one, him just showing houses and just constantly being like, "Do you rent or own your house?" Like I think it's a running gag that doesn't really work. It doesn't really fit him. Like I think he needs to be more of like just a bullshit artist, whatever. Which I mean, I understand you can do that with real estate, but it doesn't really work at the same time, which I think he finds out.
Yeah,
But
clearly he didn't do it for
but
long.
yeah, right, yeah, no, definitely, he's constantly changing trades. But yeah, it's my least favorite. I mean, I still like Pesci, like in the movie overall, but like it's my least favorite Leo of the
It
series.
doesn't detract too much because he's hardly in
Yeah,
the
he's
movie.
not in the movie that much. Yeah, he's really not. He's not integral to the thing.
But it's one of those, like we mentioned, everything with Rene Russo's character, that's what really builds up at this one, and it's just it's obviously we're gonna get into it when we actually talk about 4 and just like where it goes. But it's one of
Hmm.
those where it's like having characters like this because the entire time Murtaugh he has his family, so he already has that that anchor within his
Hmm.
his thing and with his life, and then everything with Riggs kind of is the thing that keeps him kind of unkiltered and all that stuff, whereas like
Hmm.
Riggs never has that. Well, let me rephrase, he had it, but unfortunately it was with his his wife that passed.
Sure.
So it's one of those where it's like it gives him an overall arc within the franchise, and that's what you like to see, like someone who
Hmm.
obviously we'll talk about it more when we get into 4, but it's one of those where like he was at the lowest lows of his life, and then where we get in 4, and it's it
He
starts
builds
here.
back up.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you like 2 is important because you establish that friendship and the acceptance of Leo. And then 3,
Hmm.
you're actually introducing a love interest, but you don't rush it. You know what I mean? They
Sure.
like they have a relationship by the end of it and within it, and all the honey stuff and all that stuff back and forth. It's cute and adorable, but they're still working, so that's cool too.
Hmm.
But in the 4th one, that's when they're fully together. But like a lot of movies, they don't have that patience. They rush it too much, and it makes it feel
Hmm.
more natural. And that's why I like by the end of this franchise, I'm like I like this franchise. You know what I mean? So it's I'm happy. Like I said, I'm happy that we watched this, and I'm I
Oh,
can
and
see
well,
myself
and
watching it.
it's fitting that we didn't talk about him because 3 definitely has the least memorable villain, the
Yeah,
Jack Travis guy, or whatever. He's bland as all fucking toast,
yeah,
and he's really bad. Just like, oh, the former cop who's doing something with armor piercing bullets. I don't know what. It doesn't really make a whole lot of
cop
sense.
killers
It's
they
not.
called it.
Yeah, it's yeah, cop killers, whatever. He's trying to make a statement about gang violence, or it's all kind of loose, not very well done, and he's very bland. And I like the visual, the set piece of the undeveloped neighborhood on fire and stuff at the end. I like some of that set piece stuff. It's fun. But yeah, like I just think he's pretty bland. He's definitely, I think, the worst, most forgettable villain of the series. So yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, it is what it
it's
is. You're always gonna have one of those in a series like this, where it's just like, yeah, that one kind of sucked, but
but it,
you
but
know,
it makes sense within the narrative of the whole cop stuff, and it
yeah.
also makes it fun because you could have set them up because like you put them on the beat at the beginning, and
Hmm.
so like that could have technically forced their hand to like maybe be
Hmm.
influenced on that stuff. So like it's nice to have that that kind of that comparison that what could be and like what pushes cops to be that way, because a lot of
Yeah.
franchises have that where if a cop was like you got to get in, man. You know what I mean? All the dirty cops, and you actually hear their
Sure.
reasons
Sure.
why underpay or all this extra bullshit. So
Hmm.
I understand why they went for it. It just like you said, just didn't hit, especially in
And
comparison to the others. But
yeah. Hmm.
going into the 4th one, this
Hmm.
is one that's has I think the most interesting, and I don't mean interesting in like the best way. Just it's so different of like the main plot of, of like what's going on with this family and all that stuff, and
Hmm.
it's like I'm curious like to think like if I asked them like why did you guys like put this family in there, like what did Murtaugh need, like why what I mean, I feel like he had enough family relationships throughout the entire franchise. Like I feel like if that was like on Riggs's end, where he was the surrogate, like adoption family, like housing them
Hmm.
and everything, then that would make sense. I just it's not like it's bad by any stretch of imagination. It was just I was always when I watched it, I was like what is the the overarching like points of like why giving Murtaugh the surrogate family? Do you have a reason maybe?
I don't know. I guess the only logical progression they were thinking about with where the fourth one goes is Riggs literally is getting so old that we need to introduce like a grandfather dynamic, to where like he's going to be a grandpa. But again, I don't know if that was necessary because I think you could have had more of a thing of you could still have the Renee Russo and Riggs like introducing them that she's pregnant and like have Danny Glover maybe being like the godfather, of the
Yeah,
baby, and feeling like that dynamic. I don't think I think the way that Chris Rock is introduced as like the literal husband, I guess, or
yeah,
son-in-law that he doesn't know about is weird. And like I think it's kind of sloppily done. Like I don't think you needed that. I think you could have just had the daughter is dating him, maybe just dating behind their back, or something, and she doesn't know that, and he doesn't know that. I don't know why they had to introduce this
Well,
they got
it's
married and she's pregnant and
it's
like
because you
that's
can't have the
weird.
joke of like maybe him having a gay crush on him. You know what I mean? Like you had that whole subplot where Murtaugh's
But
thinking that he's in love with them.
that was unnecessary. That was just gay panic stuff from
No,
the
no,
90s. That
I
was
know, but
weird.
I'm saying
Yeah,
like
I mean it's
that's why
yeah.
they wrote it with the marriage thing because
Yeah.
he's got a secret that he's trying to hint at. He's like, I got something to
Hmm.
tell you, and
Yeah.
Murtaugh thinks he wants his wiener, but instead he actually gave his daughter his wiener, and
Yeah,
like it's one of those
yeah.
ones.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's yeah, it is what it. I didn't find it like offensive by any means, but it definitely stood out.
Right.
Like it was unnecessary. So it's like, especially when you have like, especially this going into the 2000s at this point, where like this is the height of like these types of jokes.
Hmm.
It could have been worse, but yeah, it is what it is. It's not too big of a deal. Chris Rock, honestly, there was a moment where I was like, is he the dirty cop? Like in this, like is he like in? Like I couldn't tell
Mm.
where they're going, so I did, I wasn't fully, it wasn't obvious that was where they were going with the characters. So I mean, I knew there was something about him, but I didn't know what it was.
Yeah, I mean, I just think you could have had just a baseline tension between just Chris Rock dating his daughter, but also with them getting promoted to captain, him being his boss,
Yeah.
and you could have had just some dynamic there, and you didn't have to introduce like this marriage and baby stuff with them. You know what I mean? I just feel like it's overstuffed unnecessarily. Like you didn't need all that. Like it could have just been that dynamic of like, you're dating this guy who I'm trying to show the ropes and who's new to the department, and we don't know each other yet, and and he's kind of the third wheel of the thing. But like, I end up liking their chemistry. Like, I think they have a lot of fun stuff between all three of them. I think their chemistry
The
is
one
pretty damn
scene when
natural.
Leo pulls up and he's talking to him,
Yeah.
and then Leo's like, "Who's the perp of the bag?" He's like,
Yeah,
"Oh, 'cause
yeah.
I'm black, I'm a
Oh, because
perp."
you assume, yeah, I'm a perp or whatever. Hey, quit being so touchy. Yeah, that, and yeah, he's like, yeah, why do you got a gun? I'm a PI
Okay.
now,
Okay.
and the
Okay.
PI stuff is fun. Okay.
And then he gets
lay
pulled
off,
over
lay
and he
off.
got a cavity check.
Yeah.
Or no, that
Yeah.
was in
No,
the
I
third
mean,
one.
and
The
again,
third one when he got the cavity
I
check.
think they bring Leo back a little bit better here because they end up using him in the scene where they go to the dentist's office and use him the way Leo should be used as like a distraction. He's a BS distraction artist. He's the guy who can be really big and get everybody's attention, over here while they're doing
And that's the
something over
scene when they're
here
all,
and play it up. Yeah.
they're all high on laughing gas and they're having a
Yeah.
blast, but they're seriously
Yeah.
interrogating. I think
Mhm.
what was his name, Benny or Billy,
Uncle
something.
Benny,
Yeah,
Uncle
Uncle
Benny,
Benny.
or
Yeah,
whatever they call him. Yeah.
and
Yeah,
it's
whatever they call him.
that was a fun moment, and I think it might even be my favorite joke in the entire series is the cell phone bit where they're going back and forth talking about the cell phone, and
Yeah.
he's like, he's like, oh, you're making the call, and I'm paying for this, and then Chris Rock's like, yeah, bullshit, 3-hour battery, it lasts 20 minutes, and it just makes me think of like stuff now.
It's so 1998. Yeah, it's such a 1998
But like
bit. Yeah.
we still had these types of conversations, but in a different way, and
Sure.
just a more
Right.
advanced way. And it's just
And
hilarious. He's
now
like,
it's just
what?
texting or
Yeah.
whatever. It would
He's
be
like, why are
something
you making the
different.
phones
Yeah.
bigger? So why they make the phone smaller so we could lose it and buy another one? I was just like, it
Yeah.
was
Right.
just a bit that I was like, I just didn't know a
Yeah.
cell phone bit in 2022 could be that funny, and it just made me
Yeah.
laugh. It's like the chemistry at this point is just all out there.
It's
Like,
natural. It's
yeah,
just there. They can do it without even thinking about it. They can do it in their sleep at this point. But like, you can tell they still care. Like they still have, like the actors like still have that chemistry. The characters still have the chemistry. Yeah, it's gotten to the point where it's pretty damn natural, which is why the movie all these movies pretty much breeze by. Like I thought even 3 and 4 are
this
very
is
breezy.
the longest one at over 2 hours, but even
But
then,
it's still
yeah.
breezed by. I just watched it a couple hours ago, and like it flew by for me. Like I didn't have any problems. But yeah, well, I guess we have to talk about the introduction of Jet Li. Yeah, which this was his first American movie appearance, and it was interesting that he makes his first American movie appearance as a villain, which he usually does not play. But I think he's good in this movie. Like I feel like he's very sadistic and just his calm demeanor, but he like snaps on people, and he'll just like just kill somebody like out of nowhere. Like his choreography, I was surprised at how smooth the action choreography. I expected, not that I was expecting anything like bad with the series, but like with him, I didn't know how they would handle his style of fighting. In one of these movies, we just never had anybody do as fast as he is, because he's much faster than the martial arts we've seen in the other in the other movies. But they actually pull the camera back. He's doing stuff like you can see everything he's doing. It's not shaky cam. It's not shaky cam. It's not all that. And he's very impressive. Like for what I mean, I can imagine in 1998, you're probably like, holy shit! Like look at this guy. He's fucking fast. Like he's cool. Like he's doing all this stuff. He's kicking guns out of the air.
He's fun. I think it's towards the end, and he's fighting Riggs, and like he does like a backwards kick where his leg goes behind his head to like kick over, and I was like, "What the hell?" And it was one of those where like I've never seen that type of move, and it's just like like you said, it's inventive, and they're just doing what they're doing, and it's a fun time. It's like I feel like the plot with the villains is like real bland and real similar. It's
real wonky. Yeah, like the third one. It's
I'm not gonna remember it tomorrow type of deal, but like the when they were on screen, like the menace and like the actual like threat was there technically, but like their purpose and everything, when the forefathers, all that stuff.
Well, I couldn't figure out where like it starts as like a human trafficking thing, but then at the end it's counterfeiting money. Like I was like, how did we get from point A to point B? I figured they needed to settle on one or the other, and it was like because in the first half it was about them like trafficking families and stuff, but I feel like that gets forgotten about.
Murtaugh, and that's why I was wondering, like, what's the point? You know what I mean? I just feel like
I don't understand that.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, the heart and soul of this movie, at least for me, for number 4 specifically, was Mel Gibson and Rene Russo, their relationship, because the arc of what he finally got by the end. Probably my second favorite scene in the series that's not action is the scene where Riggs is at his wife's grave, and he's like talking to her. He's like, "Hey, I've been so scared this whole time because, I just, I feel guilty and I don't, I lost you and all that stuff. And I just don't want that to happen again because, you were a cop's wife and it was your fault or it was my fault. And especially now after he found out the truth. And, and then it was funny when Leo comes up there and he's like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And then he the baby's thing, he's like, all right, I guess that's the sign. You have a weird way to do it, but hey, all right. And
right. No, and even Leo gets him. Yeah, he's got this analogy about his frog pet or whatever, but like
it was beautiful. It's still, that was some good acting.
Yeah, but it's still nice. Like John Pesci's a good fucking actor. It's just like he's just calming down for a second to do his thing, but it worked because it was kind of a payoff for him.
You guys are my only friends, and it was so sad.
Yeah, no, it totally is. He's like I know I'm not. It's like there's a moment in one of the Jackass movies or something, and I know it's a weird analogy, but like he's like, or no, I'm sorry, not one of the Jackass, one of the American Pie movies where like they talk about Stifler, and he's like, Stifler, you're a dick, but you're our dick, yep. And he's like, but you're our guy, you know what I mean? Like we definitely clash, like it's weird personalities, but it's like those friends you have in your life where it's like, they may be brash or outlandish or whatever, or the personalities are weird, but like you guys are friends. You click and you're friends. You just are, and you rip each other.
He doesn't understand why I love you, but I know that I love you and you're my buddy.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I said by the end of this point, like they're all just full chemistry, and all the relationships are set up, and that's a good analogy to the Riggs and Murtaugh chemistry and relationship is like. Everyone else outside of being a cop, you don't see them do anything with anyone else other than the immediate family outside of the police station because like they're really all they have. You know what I mean? And it's like it's a beautiful friendship, and it's one of the best friendships on screen, and it does a fantastic job. And I was I read a review, and it was like it's hilarious that the most iconic friend that Mel Gibson has in his career is a black guy, given like what happened later in his life.
Yeah, right.
It's like it's one of those where it's like, thanks. You never know, and it's so crazy just the things that people do and say, and it's like, but at no point did I ever doubt this relationship, this chemistry, and it's one of those if you can separate the art from the artist, this is a top notch duo, and I will sing its praises. So like I keep saying, I am happy that we watched this, and it was an easy watch, 4 movies, but I am happy to knock it off my list, and I am glad that we got this. So my question to you is, when you messaged me yesterday and you're like, I'm not really happy about
and I was
what do you mean now? Elaborate.
Take into effect, I was only 2 movies in. Yeah. So I think what it was the tone of the first one and the tone of the second one were so different that I just was still like, I don't know what to think of this franchise yet. I was halfway through the franchise. So I was like, I don't know what I'm going to feel by the time I get to the end of this, if I'm going to be with it or not, or if it keeps shifting tones or if it keeps jumping all over the place. But again, we talked about here, once it's settled in and I finish the series and I kind of see where it went, I can officially say like I like this series now. You know what I mean? But it was just like the clashes were so different, and again, that first one just. It's like we talked about First Blood or First Blood 2, things like that. I was just like, wow, it was just such a different thing, or that was not what I was expecting out of the first one, just not knowing much going into it. So I was kind of like, I was still hesitant on the series, you know what I mean, of whether or not I was going to be a fan of it or not. So that's kind of what it was. I was just kind of waiting to see.
And I'm similar, but I didn't say it out loud. So now that I can also say I am a fan of this franchise, and
I am now.
I don't know which one I'm going to rewatch the most, like because I'm weird. I usually don't go into the middle of a franchise and watch a middle movie, so I'm curious if how that's going to affect my spoiler for my rankings a little bit, where it's like I don't know if I'm going to watch my favorite one as much as I normally would, being albeit my favorite, because it's not number one. So I'm definitely curious to see like how the future holds that. But with that said, are you ready to reveal our rankings?
Yeah, I got rankings. Let's go.
All right. So for me, I almost spoiler, all of these ended up being 4-star movies. None of them were 5s yet, and none of them were negative. I enjoy all, like I said, I've been saying this in the beginning, they all feel like as one cohesive, flow of a franchise. And it's one of those where I won't be mad if I, binge watch all 4 of them, every time I watch them. I won't be mad at that. So with that said, they're all 4-star movies for me, but this one is the one that for a while it was teetering the 3-star range, but the end made me so happy and I loved how it ended. And that is the 4th one. So that ended up being my number 4, because I just feel like it just, I wasn't as involved, and it wasn't that funny, and the action was fine. It was just you were building up. It felt more like the first one in terms of like tone. It was trying to build up a lot of the heart and a lot of that stuff. So it was missing just a little bit on that. But the finale and the payoff was well worth it. So it ended up still sticking the 4-star range. But that is my number 4. What is your number 4?
So mine, my one in last place is a 3-star. My third is a 3.5, and my top 2 are 4 out of 5. I don't have a 5-star movie in the series, but but yeah. So my number 4 is Lethal Weapon 3. Is kind of last for me. Just because again, I think it's just the most loose and just kind of has the most forgettable plots and bad guy. And again, Leo is like the weakest for me in this one. So a lot of the supporting stuff is just what knocks this one down for me. Again, the chemistry is still good. It's still entertaining. It's still, like I thought it was breezy to watch and all that kind of stuff. It just didn't do as much as some of the other ones did for me. So yeah, Lethal Weapon 3 is in last place for me.
There you go. I want to hear your number 3 before I reveal my number.
My number 3 is the original, is Lethal Weapon.
That is also my number 3. So that
so yeah.
Wow.
So Lethal Weapon 3, again, it's good. I'm not, and that doesn't mean it's bad. It's just, again, the tone is so much darker that I don't see myself going back to rewatch this one a lot. And again, it's like we talked about Rambo though. First Blood is not the most rewatchable movie out of the series, I think. I don't think it's like you really have to be in the right mindset to go into that one, because it's so radically different than the other ones, that I get people's affection for it. Like if they probably saw it young, maybe they clicked with it. But I just prefer kind of the later ones where they've already got that chemistry, where they've already got that breezy quality, the slightly more entertainment value. I just prefer that kind of stuff a little bit more, at least with this series. There's other series where I like it, where it starts off a little darker and then they go off the rails. But like this one, I feel like, number 3, it's just going to be the original one for me. Like I still like it, but it's in number 3 for me.
And so my number 2 is number 3. And the reason for that is I just feel that this one was a lot of fun for me, and I just love the chemistry between Mel and Rene Russo, and I just love like what it set up. Like I'm a sucker for like relationships within like these types of franchises, if they fit and they don't feel forced or they don't feel like a sore thumb. And I feel like this did a good job of having that balance of it was natural for this character, it's what he needed, but also like I said, the scene where they were comparing the
right
cars and stuff. It did a good job of like really setting up that relationship. So it just and it just it's a lot of fun. Like I feel like my 1 and my 2 are the ones that I'll probably just watch because I can pretend that they're their own franchises because spoiler alert, I already had the 1 where it's not my it's not an introduction. It's not setting up anything. It's just going right into it. And I really feel like this would be a nice double feature for me. So number 3 is a lot of fun for me, and it's it's not really in competition with my number 1 because I feel like there's actually a pretty big gap there.
Yeah,
So,
right. Yeah.
what is your number 2?
Well, my number 2 is Lethal Weapon 4, what we just talked about. So yeah, Lethal Weapon 4, and to me, I was surprised at how much I liked it because I had heard so much negativity going in. You probably saw the same things, reading up on it, like on how I don't know, people just hate this movie for whatever reason. I thought it was super damn entertaining. I just had a lot of fun with it. It breezed by. I really liked I thought all the chemistry again still clicked on all cylinders. I liked the addition of Chris Rock. I liked Leo in this one a lot better than the third one. Almost on par with the second one, but pretty close. Mel and Rene Russo's chemistry was still great in this one. And again, Jet Li was just one of the more memorable villains of the series, and I think his action scenes are so well staged, even more so than what I thought they would do with it. I talked about how surprising it was that how much they pulled back and let him do his thing, that I like that a lot. I was expecting it to be very shaky, maybe poorly filmed a little bit. But no, it was great. So yeah, that really caught me off guard and I liked it a lot. So yeah, Lethal Weapon 4 is my second. I could see myself going back to this one, in the future. Like I liked it.
Absolutely. And with that said, we
have the same one.
Number 1. And I'm actually really surprised, but also really happy. Like that is really awesome to hear that is where we rely on it. So, like you said, none of these are 5-star movies for you. But do you feel like this could get there, or is it one of those where it's peaked, but that's not a bad thing per se?
I think it's peaked. We'll talk about the future of the franchise in a minute, but I don't think this is going to end up being one of my favorite franchises or anything. Yeah. But I could see myself coming back to 2 and 4, in the future, just because I had fun with, they're on HBO Max. I could see myself popping this one up on HBO Max and just watching them. You know what I mean? Or putting on the background.
Or hey, we're doing
having a little fun with. You know what I mean? Just putting something on, having a little fun with it again because they've. I just feel like for me, 2 and 4 just have that flow, just have that entertainment value where it's got that right balance of everything. So I could definitely see that. But yeah, 2 I think just is kind of the whole package when it comes to the series, and I just think they got it right. And is it a perfect movie? No. I don't think it's as high as some of the other franchises. And I'll just say right now, there's other buddy cop movies I like more than these movies to me, but it's also because I've seen them way more. Yeah. I like the first 2 Rush Hours a lot more than any of these movies. I think the Rush Hour movies are a lot of fun.
I was actually thinking, fun fact, I was thinking we should have, in retrospect, we should have combined this, Rush Hour, and Bad Boys, and just had a nice buddy cop, ranking those 3, because then that's what 3 Rush Hours, 3 Bad Boys, and these 4, so that's 10 movies. Like that would have been a nice fun one. So I thought that was in retrospect. I'm like, damn it, we definitely missed the mark on that. But I now that we've actually talked about it, I really like how we ended up, going about.
Yeah, I would more compare these to the ones that came out a few years before this with 48 Hours, with Nick Nolte and Eddie Murphy. Because I haven't seen those either, so I don't really have an opinion on me. That's another blind spot for me. I haven't seen the 2 48 Hours movies, but I know people are kind of hit or miss on those too. But yeah, I really, it was a solid franchise. Again, when I take a step back now that I've seen them all and look at the whole package, I think I definitely like the vibe of the whole franchise. You know what I mean? And I dig, especially these definitely Riggs and Murtaugh. I can see why they're very beloved. It's one of the most beloved duos. Regardless of where you rank the individual movies, as far as a duo, an action buddy duo, they'd be in the conversation.
No negative that anyone ever says about this franchise has anything to do with Riggs and Murtaugh's
the chemistry, yes,
or the actors even. They are not the issue. I mean, we technically don't have that many issues with it as a whole, but for the masses, the reason that 2 of them are negative and this franchise isn't as high as other ones is not because of these 2. They're rock solid for what they're doing. And it's you love to see it, and it's like I said, it's one of those where it's like, I wouldn't be surprised one year if I dress up as, as Riggs for Halloween, just because it's like, hey, now that I've had this, I consider myself a fan of the franchise. Sure, it's a nice time. So I'm curious to see, like I did Steven's comment there, of his rankings. I'm curious to see for the most part what people think. His is 1, 2, 4, and 3. So
right.
not far off for us. But he's definitely the first one to say number 1 is his favorite, which is going to be interesting.
Well, no, and I get and I've seen that online. It's the highest rated on like IMDb. It's the highest rated on in a lot of people's lists. When they're listing the franchise, the articles you see, Lethal Weapon movies ranked or whatever. Most of the time, it's the first one. But again, I think it's going to be personal taste on whether you prefer that kind of darker tone or not. And again, certain franchises I do prefer that as opposed to where they go later. I think a good example is Nightmare on Elm Street. Nightmare on Elm Street, the first one is very serious. Like there's not a whole lot of Freddy's not jokey, and it gets jokier throughout the franchise. So but whether you like that or not, that's up to personal preference. But I definitely could see, like, if you prefer that more serious. Again, Shane Black is all over that first one, and again, he's kind of on the second one, but not totally. But yeah, he's all over that first one. If you dig that, I could definitely see where that would come into play. So yeah, no, I get it. I could totally see that. I just think the second one just has the best of both worlds, the best of everything. So
and that's
where it was.
That.
Yeah,
and that is interesting because I did our combined list, and number 4, Lethal Weapon.
Wow.
is our number 4. Our number 3, I decided that your negatives outweighed my positives, so number 3 is Lethal Weapon 3.
Okay.
Lethal Weapon 4 takes number 2, and then without a doubt, Lethal Weapon 2.
We both had a number 1. Oh yeah.
So that is definitely the most interesting part of that. Is this the first time we shared a number 1?
I think so, because yeah, if we go through it, Rocky, I had the Rocky 4 director's cut. Oddly enough, I was all over the place on that one. Saw, we were different. What is it?
Rambo,
Alien Predator, we were different. Rambo, we were different. This might be the first time we've had the same
ones for the directors. Yeah.
So how many episodes did it take? 7 or 8 episodes before we matched on our number 1?
It took a series to only have 4 movies for us to finally.
Yeah, right, to settle on
it. Pick though. That's what's awesome.
Well, you would think, going into episode, they'll probably both agree that the first one's the number 1. And it's like, no, we didn't. Like, we were both like kind of not iffy on it, like it was still good, but we were both like
the franchise too. So we didn't hint that this is what we were going. So I'm actually really happy that we agreed on that. I had no idea where this was going to go. So So what is on the docket for the future?
I don't know, because we had to adjust our schedule a little bit because to give full disclosure, we were originally going to do Kevin Smith, but Red State is like, I've tried to do some research on what the hell's going on with Red State. It is like completely unavailable anywhere. It is not available for rent anywhere, to buy digitally anywhere. The DVDs and Blu-rays are out of print, so you can get them on eBay for like $30-$40, but they're out of print.
Luckily, I've seen Dogma, so I can have a ranking, but I've never seen Red
State.
Right.
Well, and that's the thing is, I bought all the DVDs back in the day, so I have that double DVD of Dogma. I have it. Well, like, I had a used DVD of Red State. I don't know where it went to. It disappeared in the move, I guess. But I saw it in the theater too. So I have seen Red State, but not in a while. That would be one I'd want to rewatch for the series. Obviously, it's been like 10 years since I saw it. Yeah. But yeah, like, it's weird. I don't know what's going on with Kevin Smith and some of his distribution rights for some of his movies, but it's very strange. So we'll have to put that one on the back burner for now. Maybe by the time Clerks 3 comes out, which is supposed to be maybe sometime later this year. I don't know. I've heard rumblings about that. Maybe they'll sort some things out and get some of it out there. So we'll see. But we've talked about a couple of different ones since we did a franchise going back to a filmmaker. So we have some ideas. So we've got
Del Toro.
Del Toro, or we've got Stanley Kubrick, or maybe a F. Gary Gray. Speaking of Friday, or maybe
Yep.
a Sam Mendes. There's a couple of areas we can
Yeah.
go. I might leave that up to you, sir. Wherever we go next.
I
I don't
actually
know.
think that with the release of Nightmare Alley, I think Del
You
Toro
want to
is
go
the one.
Del Toro?
Yeah,
Okay.
similar to what we did with Edgar Wright. I feel like it just makes the most sense.
Okay.
And then we kind of leading up. So you could say what is our massive one that we're doing, because we have to start prepping for it a lot sooner than
Oh, dude.
usual.
Well, I mean, we're gonna get there. I don't know how many rewatches I need to do, honestly. Maybe a few, but we're gonna do a mega Batman ranking when the Batman comes out. And around the time or the week after, whatever it is, yeah, the probably the one after, obviously, so we can go see it, the
I
new
didn't
one.
know
But
this.
yeah, with
Steven commented, he said if you still have the DVD service for Netflix.
you know what? Now that you mentioned that, that might be where I rewatched it. I had DVD by Netflix back then in like 2012 or whatever. I still had that, so I know I saw it in the theater, and then I might have rewatched it then. So that's what it is. Because I know I had a DVD in my hands at some point, but I guess it wasn't my personal one. But yeah, when we just have to wait for Red State to become available, unless there's a torrent out there or something. I don't know. But anyways, yeah, around the time of the Batman, yeah, we're gonna do a massive Batman ranking. So pretty much every theatrically released movie with Batman in it, we're gonna rank it. So everything from Batman the movie from 1966, with Adam West. He reminded me Batman Mask of the Phantasm was theatrically released,
Yep.
so that'll be in there. The Lego Batman movie counts; it's in there.
Both versions of Justice
Both
League.
versions of Justice League, the Justice League and the Zack Snyder. But yeah, obviously BVS. All the 90s Batman movies,
90s,
yeah,
89,
all those. But yeah, we counted it up, and I think it's like 20 movies.
Yeah.
I think when we counted it all up, something like that. I'd have to do the final tally, but it's something like that. So
yeah, so that's definitely going to be a big one.
it'll be something. Well, because obviously you've got the three Dark Knight films, the
Yep.
Nolan films. Yeah, there's a lot of movies. So, but that's interesting because a lot of people would assume, oh well, well, probably Dark Knight will be. I don't know, will it? Because I like Batman '89 a lot. just to throw that out there. That one holds a special place in my heart. I'm a big fan of Zack Snyder's Justice League too. So I don't know. I don't know, man. But we'll be doing that.
Got a hater in the house. Lethal Weapon. Not a fan of Lethal Weapon, apparently. Oh man,
It's Jay.
he doesn't count.
Did you fight him?
Yeah, I am super excited for that Batman one, because that one's not gonna feel like homework, because there's only arguably 1-2 bad movies in the entire stretch. The rest are like fine, you know what I mean? But it's
and yeah, so we'll have to do that. So what we'll have to do is next week do Del Toro. We'll have to do something else in between, because we'll need something, because the second will be or March 2nd will be still pre the Batman release. So we'll do something before that, maybe another small one to lead up to the big one, and then we'll do the Batman stuff. But yeah, that's one where I'm super familiar with all the movies, so I might only have to do a little prep. I've not sat through the Lego Batman movie, so that gave me a headache on the plane when I tried to watch it on a plane one time, so I had to cut it off.
Yeah, I don't think it's a plane movie. Very fast paced.
Yeah, it's very like trying to watch it on this little screen in front of me gave me a migraine. So, but I do own it, so I'll have to watch it.
That one's free right there. Either version of Justice League. Wow.
Well, sorry, Steven. I'm a big fan of one of those versions. So
we will get to that. So
we'll get there.
Is there another franchise that we've set in stone, or are we still got some rumbling?
Well, I mean, we can find something maybe a little smaller beforehand, just because like you said, the Batman prep might take up a little extra of our time, so we might have to find something kind of in between. We could do like a Die Hard. We could do an Indiana Jones, something like that with the 4
Indiana
or 5 movies, kind of like
this.
this.
Have some hot takes on Indiana Jones, so I will.
We could do. Why don't we slate Indy to lead up to Batman? We talked a little bit about how Last Crusade was a big hit in '89. Right in front of Lethal Weapon 2, and that'd be a nice, easy, again, another 4 movie thing. So, but we could talk just like this one. We could talk about each thing and then reveal our rankings.
I like that.
But yeah, why don't we set that, and then we'll kind of take it easy leading up to our big Batman
I like that
ranking.
lot.
So let's do it. So that'll become So Del Toro next week,
Del Toro.
then Indiana, then Indy, and then Batman. So because we'll need time obviously to see it in the theater, and that might even give us time to see it twice if we see it in the same weekend. You know, who knows?
I have a feeling I'm going to. So.
Hey, you know what? They said, it's going to be like 2 hours and 50 minutes or something. I was like, great, sounds good. I'm in. I'm down. Let's do it. I want to see what we got. So
I don't know if we know, but you're a big fan of the 4-hour Justice League movie, so I don't think you're worried.
I like it. I'm not worried about that at all. give me Batman. Yeah. Well, I'll say when it's bad, it's bad, like long. But yeah, when it's good, it's good. So
there you go. So let us know what you got going on your other channel over at Movie Hero Network.
Yeah. So Movie Hero, we just we're always doing tournament fights and tier ranker fights. We just did sort of a Valentine's thing the other night. We did we're doing a rom-com series. So instead of doing 64, we literally had to do 128. So we're doing like a double episode thing, and then we're doing a championship of that. So yeah, we did the first 64 the other night, threw those in the tournament, and that was a lot of fun, which reminds me I need to put up the poll before I go to sleep tonight.
You don't want to forget that again. You know that
I don't want to forget that again. But yeah, I did that. I believe this Friday we've got our next in the Oscar series, so we're going to be doing all the Best Picture nominees from, I believe, 2012 to 2003. So we're going backwards. So that'll be nice. We're putting 64 of those. It's like 68. We're gonna have some play-in matches, but yeah, we're gonna be doing a series, and we haven't really determined where we're gonna stop with that. Just at some point we're gonna stop. Maybe late 60s, early 70s, maybe, because after that it's going to get into territory where nobody's seen, maybe a few movies here and there. But yeah, we're doing that. And then I just found out I will be on Rankem with Malcolm Lay this Saturday talking top 12 movies featuring a wrestler.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and that should be fun because I've already put my personal list together for that one, and I've got some fun picks that a lot of people probably aren't thinking about. So, hopefully that'll be really interesting. All right. So yeah, and then and Jacob,
the longest yard.
Jacob Barber and I will be doing a show tomorrow night, a podcast about movies, and we'll be talking about unsung sequels. So just sequels that deserve a little more attention. Not your typical. We're not going to be talking about Terminator 2 and Aliens and, Godfather 2, all the sequels that have been talked to death. Just, maybe smaller sequels that we feel are just need to be talked about. Maybe not as good as the original, not quite the original, but still very good that we just want to showcase. So that's
Weapon 2, maybe.
Maybe, but it's still fresh in my mind. You want to hear my thoughts? You can just watch this show. Yeah, not quite.
I'm saying movies that where it's like people think of the first one, they forget the second one's awesome.
Hey, I would definitely, if somebody were to ask me, that category better than the original. I think this is Lethal Weapon 2. I think is better than the original.
There we go.
So yeah,
and we wouldn't know that until we did this franchise. So thank God for this show because it finally got you to open up that box set and it got me to finish the series. Because after the first one,
this is why I buy stuff, Henry. I just buy stuff. Sometimes it sits in the plastic over on the shelf, but then when you go, hey, let's call an audible and do Lethal Weapon. I'm like, oh great, my box set's just sitting right over there. Let me crack that open, and I'm ready to go.
Fucking works out, man. There we go.
And with you, it was on HBO Max, so that worked out really nice, which I did see that. There you go.
I actually have them. I had the box set on my Vudu.
Oh, do you? Okay, nice.
Ready to go.
Nice.
So absolutely. So as always, if you made it this far in the video, then you probably liked it. So make sure you drop a like and comment just any suggestions. We haven't asked that yet because we were kind of building up the show, but comment any suggestions. If there's a popularity where there's a demand for a specific thing or something that's relevant, maybe we'll do an audible and we'll mix it up a little.
Or if you've got those interesting crossover ones we've been doing, we did Alien versus Predator. We're gonna do eventually, just because it's a lot of movies. We're gonna wait about a month or two. But like Terminator versus RoboCop was one I had, like a crossover kind of ranking. Yeah. If you have an idea for like a crossover ranking thing where we can combine like two mini franchises into one list, like
Men in Black and 21 Jump Street, since that movie never happened.
That didn't happen. Yeah. Well, really. Men in Black and Ghostbusters, you could almost cross over because they're very similar. It's like Men in Black is basically Ghostbusters with, secret agents, essentially. It's very similar. It's Ghostbusters with aliens.
If we can find something to combine with Back to the Future, I would be down for that. Like, there's definitely some things out there that we can have some
fun feel with. Like Back to the Future, if you want to do time travel duos, Back to the Future crossed over with Bill and Ted could be interesting. Like
there's 6 movies right there.
the duo back in time, and you bump it up to 6 movies, and then anything could happen there. So
Holy
yeah, stuff
cow.
like that where we can play around and have a little fun with the
Yeah,
rankings and
absolutely.
just play around with that. I'm always down for that stuff. So for sure.
Absolutely. So
I'm gonna write
so
those down now so I don't forget. So I'll put it on my.
I love it. That's how you
Well, I've got a
ding.
master list in my phone that every time we Henry and I will just message during the day randomly, and he'll be like, "All right, what about this? What about that?" So we had a whole bunch of those yesterday. I'm just writing them all down.
I
We're
love it.
we're just playing
Because
around with it. I dig it.
sometimes that light bulb goes off and you never know what you're in the mood for.
Yeah.
So it gives us a reason to watch. Or if like if you're prepping something for a tournament fight or a tier ranker fight, so it's relevant,
Yeah.
or if I'm studying for a drunk match that I'm doing, that's why I even brought up
Well,
the
and
Kevin Smith one.
and again, we want to try to keep it relevant. When Jurassic World Dominion rolls around, which the trailer just came out for, I think
Yep.
we do. Obviously, we'll do Jurassic Park rankings when it comes out. Yeah, I think that would be very
Absolutely.
relevant. 6 movies, round out the trilogy on that one, and rank the series. We'll try to do stuff like that when it ties into like a theatrical release too.
And
I
and,
think
and
that's
if we're
always
and
fun.
if we're being super honest, when the new Thor comes out, instead of doing a whole MCU, we could just do the Thor movies. Like there's
Just
there's
do the
things,
Thor
yeah.
movies.
There's
Yeah,
definitely
yeah.
something we can do. So there's always things to toy
Mhm.
with. So that's why I love the show, because there's no set number. You don't have to.
Nope,
It's just
we can
let's
do
rank stuff.
whatever we want.
And then
Yep,
eventually
stuff.
we'll get crazy where we do our top 10 Leo movies and Scorsese and stuff like that for
Well,
the
yeah,
bigger
when
ones.
we
But
do
yeah,
that, because we tried to find these filmmakers who have like 10 or less kind of movies, where you can play around with it. But yeah, anyone's, like a Scorsese, like a Spielberg, where they have like, 40, 50 movies. It's like, obviously, we're not going to sit there and rank 50 movies. We're just not going to do it. It's just too much, but we'll each come up with our personal like list. We'll pick a
right.
number and just do our own list, So that's kind of how we'll do that in the future. But yeah, we'll definitely do those on occasion as well. So yeah, that's why I like the format. We can just do whatever we want. Let's rank stuff. That's why it's called Let's Just Rank Stuff.
That's
We pick one and
exactly.
we just roll with it, man.
Let's
That's
not put
exactly what the
ourselves in a
show is.
box. Because
No, no,
even
no,
though
no.
you love horror, and I'm a big horror fan now. We're not just horror
Yeah,
guys. We're not just action
no.
guys. We're not just
We can do
comedy guys. We're not just
anything.
classics. Yeah, anything. So
And
with that,
eventually,
ooh,
we'll get around to ranking the 26 Godzilla movies, but maybe that's like a year off. No,
yeah,
I'm kidding.
I'll definitely have to do some work for that
No, I'm kidding.
one.
That's way too much of a task for any newbie. Because yeah, I'm the fan of that shit like that. But no, I wouldn't task that on anybody. You're like, which one did I watch again?
I
Godzilla
will
versus
say, since
Megalon
you
or
since you
Godzilla
brought it up,
versus?
I own them all, so I would be down to do the new Kong vs. Godzilla, the new ones, starting with Kong Skull
Oh,
Island,
the
Godzilla.
the most recent
Yeah,
MonsterVerse movies.
there's
Yeah, you
five.
could
There's
definitely do
five of
the
those, so I would be definitely
yeah the
down for that. So
MonsterVerse. Yeah, we could definitely do that one because yeah, those 5 are those would be interesting. I've seen opinions all over the place on those,
yep.
so I think
Hey,
I have a solid
let's
number
add
one that might
Pacific
not.
Rim into it too, because it's in the
What
2010s.
the 2 Pacific Rim movies?
Yeah,
Okay, all right. I haven't
it's
watched the
all
second one.
2010s, so 2010s monster movies, like essentially.
I I didn't watch the Boyega one, so I would have to watch that one for that one.
You
But
don't have to.
okay,
You don't have to. That's not good.
that's what I've heard.
All right, so before we get into more, because we could just do this for hours.
We're
On
just doing
ideas.
shit. This is
My name is
becoming like a
Henry.
round table where we just talk about shit. Yeah,
Absolutely. My name
right.
is Henry Confidential. That is awesome, Pesal.
Yeah.
As he stated earlier, make sure you go check out everything he's doing over the Movie Hero Network
Mhm.
for both his shows with Jordan, but also with Jacob for the Let's Talk About
Mhm.
Movies podcast. So he's Pez. I'm Henry. We are out because this is where we rank stuff, and we are ending this ranking. And that was a bad outro. Later.